And I got a special guest who brings it every time she joins us. Lisa Rooney is back. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, how are you?
Well, I'm always better when you're around and when we get to talk about the stuff we're getting. Oh, and I see that you got your Robert Scott Bell Show t-shirt. The Power to Heal is yours right behind you. That's awesome.
Yes, it came in yesterday.
It took forever. I don't know what, it's probably me. It's my fault, I'm sure, but I'm glad you got it.
We have a lot to talk about today, right?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's an understatement. And I think, your passion to really hit a lot of these emotional issues, particularly with young people. We both have kids in the same generation. We call them the Gen Zs, and they're awesome kids. But man, there's a lot of people struggling in that generation with emotional and depression. And, what is this world that they're quote unquote inheriting? And I want to help everybody, but look, I have a special place in my heart for the kids that are our kids' ages.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't set out to start working with that age group, but after COVID, because I had coached so many of their moms, their moms were like, hey, I want my young adult to learn this. I want my young adult to understand, their values. And I want my young adult to experience homeopathy. I want them to know a different way in order to handle their ailments and their griefs and their traumas and all of the things. And it has just slowly grown from there. It's about half of my practice now.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did they find you because of your kids saying, hey, my mom can help you? I mean, that'd be kind of weird, wouldn't it?
I've actually had a couple of that have gotten on my calendar because they've been friends with my daughter. And, she's like, you should really go talk to my mom.
That's
so
cool.
Yes, that has happened. But mostly it's because I have either worked with their mothers usually, or maybe I've worked with a friend of their mother's, and they've said, hey, maybe Lisa can help, with the things that you're struggling with.
Nice. Well, I'm so glad that you are helping them, but we can also learn a little bit about that, obviously independent of identifying anybody that you see and consults with you. But this is how also I'll share, the experiences I've had helping people. I don't reveal them. It's just a matter of we can share stories that are seemingly commonplace now, right? That I don't know if I call them a rubric necessarily, but in a current context, a lot of common experiences that are manifesting similarly. Mm-hmm. And then we got to, nail down a little bit individually. Of course, that can be distinctions, but there are certain patterns in generations that, you're now interacting with a lot in that generation. Maybe you can relate some of these challenges for the parents and grandparents, much less those young people in the audience.
Yeah, I have to walk very gingerly in this conversation because it's a very nuanced conversation. I don't want to say that nobody should ever under any circumstances consider a psychotropic drug or any drug. I don't want to say that because there are certain scenarios where that might be something that we need to do to pull them out of the scenario that they're in. But I think the big conversation here is that there has never been a discussion about the off-ramp. And one of the things I want to communicate to the young adults, but also to all of the parents that are listening right now, anytime you are considering a pharmaceutical drug, this is a chemical intervention and it is a suppressive drug. And so anytime you are considering that for your child, the first thing that you need to be asking is, what's the off-ramp? Once we go on these, well, maybe the second thing, the first thing would be what are going to be the side effects, mm-hmm. which, as we've talked about, are really just effects of the drug. But then what's the off-ramp? What's the end game here? Because sometimes we might need to, just like we've talked about when my son had surgery. He needed some pain meds for a couple of days afterwards. But what was the off-ramp? How was I going to bring his vital force up and reduce the need for that chemical intervention so that he could rebalance and do it quickly? So it has to be done with that intention, and you have to be having that conversation with your practitioner and your provider. What's the off-ramp here? Because we are not, just like you said, we don't have a deficiency in psychotropic drugs. There's not a deficiency in Prozac or Zoloft or whatever it is. So what is so if we have to use these things, it has to be short-term, And we have to know what that off ramp is. And that is part of the advocacy that we have to do as individuals.
How many have you encountered anybody of your kids' ages that have been already prescribed these drugs, these psychotropic drugs from psychiatrists, for instance?
Oh yeah. I'd have to go back and look at what the percentage is, but yeah, I have a handful of them that have come into my practice who have been on anti-anxiety. Anxiety is the big thing for this generation. It's anxiety. And sometimes there's depression that's masked. The anxiety is masking the depression, but I'm nervous all the time. I don't know what to do. I can't think straight. I don't know how to feel. I have the OCD. I have the compulsions. Everything feels so stressful. I'm dissociating. When I was 20 years old, I wasn't even using that word. I didn't even know what that word meant.
Right.
But they're using it now. They know what it means because the nervous system disruption is so significant that they are having to dissociate in order to be able to get through the day. And oftentimes they are functioning, but what's underneath is chaos. And it's not exclusive to the Gen Z.
Sure.
I mean, I think, some of the stories that I listened to with the most recent Maha event, there was one girl that talked about how she was given drugs when she was in second grade because she was too fidgety and she was not doing well in school. And she couldn't be contained within the classroom. So it's coming out in a lot of different areas at a lot of different age groups. And it's also in our generation too. I mean, our generation is overtaxed and overstressed and we're tired and we're numb. I mean, we could go on about, Gen X versus millennials versus Gen Z, we could have that conversation, but there's many in our generation that are also utilizing it. When I lived in Naperville, Illinois, when my kids were born, and I was at a party, and there were a handful of doctors at that party, and this would have been close to 20 years ago. So my kids were real young, and I was talking to one of the doctors, and Naperville had just been voted one of the best places to raise a family, raise children. And I was like, wow, that's so amazing. Like, here we are living in this town that is just voted one of the best places in America to raise a child. And he's like, yeah, for it being one of the best places to raise a child, there's an awful lot of moms that are taking psychotropic drugs just to make it through the day.
Wow.
And that was 20 years ago. So to me is, this is a conversation. Yes, we need to be having this conversation about what's the off-ramp. Absolutely, because we have put ourselves into this cesspool of, all of these problems that have been created as a result of this without keeping our eye on the ball. And the ball is, how are we moving people forward? How are we settling the nervous system? How are we handling the anxiety and the depression? We need to be having that conversation. But the bigger conversation in my mind that needs to be having is, why is everybody's nervous system so disrupted?
Yes. And that's a big story, that there are common features, as I acknowledge that, in all of humanity right now, in a lot of exposures and nutrient depletion or deficiencies. But there's always unique circumstances, whether it be emotional traumas unique to your circumstance or your family circumstance. And they're manifesting in unique ways, even though modern medicine tends to generalize anxiety. It's all the same thing. So in homeopathy, we'll go, well, tell me about this nuance of that thing that might indicate a different remedy versus everybody gets an SSRI, everybody gets an anxiolytic drug. Now, the categories of these drugs in psychiatric medications, quite different than a lot of the other categories of drugs in terms of the danger of titrating up and down. Not as much the anxiolytics, but the SSRIs particularly dangerous when you're first getting onto them to try and find that stable. What is that level? Or you're like, oh, I feel great, right? Some people report that. But then you go, all right, what's the off ramp? Getting down off of those things can be even more dangerous sometimes than getting on them because of dependency. So it complicates our job as homeopaths or any natural doctors to go, they went in with anxiety and depression. Now they're having problems still. And it's compounded by the drug that they're on, that now we have to find how do we work with their doctors or pharmacists to safely get them off? Because
Mhm.
I don't want to take, we as homeopaths can't be responsible for what happens and we're not telling them to don't go off cold turkey. That's not what we're saying.
No.
But as I said, finding a safe off ramp, it's easier for certain medications. I mentioned cholesterol lowering drugs. You can cold turkey those. You're going to be healthier. You're going to live longer. But also, as I talked about, another aspect of depression, if anybody's trying to reduce their cholesterol on a drug or anything, you could make worse emotional and mental disturbances and disorders because the brain and nervous system needs that cholesterol desperately for proper function.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're exactly right. When I'm working with clients who are also on, medications, particularly the anti-anxiety medications, I'm telling them, do not go off. You are not to go off your drug. That is a conversation you have to have with your doctor. And when you're ready to start titrating down, you need to be having that conversation, but you need to keep me informed, because what I'm going to do is come alongside you from a homeopathic standpoint and from a coaching support standpoint, somatic healing, all of those things. And how does homeopathy support the titrating down of that? Does that mean that we may need to utilize serotonin in a homeopathic form in order to help balance you as you are coming down off that drug? When you have anxiety that rises, what is the alternative so that you don't have to titrate back up, but we've got another alternative that we can bring in that can address that rise in that anxiety as you are titrating off? There's lots of things that we can do. It's not going to be a perfect situation, and it has to be extraordinarily slow. Very, very, very slow.
Just a reminder for those of you tuning in for the first time and seeing this awesome homeopath, Lisa Rooney, vibrantlife247.com. She's been with us reporting on some what we call extended homeopathic hits. We've done ditch and switch and all kinds of fun things, and it's always a great conversation. And many of you have availed yourself of the course she's provided as well. We get great discounts going on, but always, if you're wanting to get some kind of consult or support or coaching in some way, Lisa mentions, if you mention the RSB show when you reach out to her at her website, she'll give you $100 off. Thank you for that, Lisa, as well. And once a month when you're able, you're one of our special guests on our AMAs or Ask Me Anythings, which is, we've had such great discussion.
So much fun. Those are so much fun.
Yeah. And the places, I remember Dr. C, the places you'll go. We do that with those AMAs. So consider becoming a patron supporter and joining us there as well. Now, how do we talk about it? I mean, are there any stories you can share? Again, obviously not naming names, that kind of give us another perspective on the things that are happening out there, even extreme weird stuff, but also how homeopathy may play a role, because we've talked about in the Maha movement, I'm like going, hey, homeopathy, hello. Now we are seeing a lot of that start. Other homeopaths going, hey, what about us, right? Yeah. So we know that the trend is in the right direction, even if there's wins and losses all the time in life. But how do we integrate this? What kind of stories what can we learn from you and your experiences as well?
Yeah, and I think that's great. And I was thinking, and just in prepping for the show, I was thinking about a handful of clients. I'm going to share 3 different examples of clients that I've worked with where we have utilized homeopathy to handle the anxieties and the depressions and the OCD. Mm-hmm. And it has prevented them from needing to go on to any of the psychotropic drugs. I also want to talk about, like, how can homeopathy come alongside these individuals that have maybe gone off of their drugs, but now they're saddled with these long-term side effects. And what can we do to help reset the system?
Yes.
So, to take that angle, I listened to some of the video from Lauren Friedman, who talked about how she had been on those psychotropic drugs for many, many years and ended up with this post-SSRI sexual dysfunction. So it was a complete numbing of her system. And it didn't just numb what was happening in her genitals. It numbed her entire being, her entire soul. You said outsourcing the essence of who we are. You said that at the beginning. It has completely numbed her, the essence of who she is. And she mentioned that she cannot even feel love for her own mother. I had to take a very deep breath because the mama bear in me was very activated. I felt incredible sadness. She is likely about the same age as my son, a couple years younger than my daughter. Even now, just talking about it, it brings, it brings up a lot of emotion. because for these young adults to be saddled with a side effect of that, and I believe she said that it was not even part of the package inserts, that was not part. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that's what she said. I listened to a lot of different interviews over the course of the last week, just prepping for today's talk. So, if she were to come to me and she was one of my clients, the first thing that I would be looking at is, okay, what are the specific symptoms? So, and we have some great remedies in the repertory for loss of sexual sensation, for genital numbness, for the diminished pleasure. We have some great remedies for that. So we want to look at what can we do to help reset the system from the standpoint of the symptoms that are being expressed. But what I also see happening is there is an entire emotional component to this. So not only is she emotionally numb, but she has a lot of deep-seated anger, and she probably is carrying a lot of shame. And so those are components of working with the client that we have to work with. We're working with the physical symptoms, but we also have to work with the emotional symptoms. And this comes within that framework that I've talked to you about, that I look at all my clients through, the 3 T's. Where are the traumas? Where's the toxicity? And where are the thoughts? So we've talked a little bit about the trauma. We've talked a little bit about the thoughts. We've talked about the physical aspect that is happening. But we also have to look at this from the standpoint of toxicity.
Mm-hmm.
And what is happening within the system, that the system is so blocked up. I mean, it's like she went into a freeze state, a complete freeze state. And it's happened not only in her physical, but in her mental, emotional as well. And we have great remedies that can unlock that freeze state. But sometimes we need to give the body the information, because remember, homeopathy is information medicine. Homeopathy isn't going in and changing something. It is giving the body the energetic signature, the energetic messenger that it needs so that the body knows how to make the change. And that's the kind of medicine that we want. Just, what they said in that video, this is the medicine, that we thought we were getting. This is the medicine we thought we were getting. This is the medicine that we've been waiting for, because it's teaching the body, it's giving the body the energetic imprint, the information to make the changes. And we have to trust that the body has the ability to do that. We are not designed randomly. There is so much wisdom to our body and the way that it works. It just sometimes gets stuck, and it needs some information in order to move forward. Yes. So, and I can liken that, the example that I can liken that to is when I have women that come into my practice, or teenage girls that come into my practice, and they have dysregulated cycles. Mom has been on birth control pill, and now daughter has a dysregulated cycle, and she's never been on birth control pill. In both cases, I can detox them using a homeopathic protocol to detox them from the birth control pill, and oftentimes see that cycle re-regulate. So is part of the reason that the cycle is dysregulated is because that chemical intervention got locked in the body, and then the body didn't know what to do with it. So it's like, oh, okay, we're just going to hold it, and we're just going to freeze.
Mm-hmm.
Is that part of what has happened in this young girl's case? I mean, it could be, and it's not just in my practice, because I incorporate homeopathy, but I also incorporate coaching and somatic work. There's a whole lot of coaching. There's a whole lot of somatic work that needs to happen there, because we need to pull all of this trauma out of her nervous system as well. So, we would be working with the disassociation, the shame, the grief, all the things that need to bring her back into her body, because she has disassociated from her body so that she doesn't have to feel what's happening. And she didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah. Well, it occurs to me, and I think we mentioned off the air, we're talking a bit about the circumstances. So we talk about the environment, the terrain, or the family itself. There's always the interactivity of family members, even well-meaning family members, doing things that are perceived as maybe even abusive and traumatic, whether they were or not. I mean, it doesn't matter. The receiver perceives it that way. We have to address that. And, sometimes it's hard if they're still in that environment to break the cycle, because now you're relying on behavioral shifts as well within that, where they're not necessarily all coming to see you as a family.
Right.
How do you help someone in a circumstance like that?
Yeah. And to broaden this conversation, and my contribution to this conversation, or the way that I look at it, is what's happening in the nervous system. One of my teachers, she really taught me, ask why, Lisa. Why? Why is the symptom expressing? Why is the system dysregulated the way it is? So we can throw remedies at symptoms, and sometimes we need to do that. But we also have to keep asking the why. So in the case of the girl who got prescribed when she was in second grade because she was fidgety in school, why? What was happening? What was happening within the family system? What was happening within her physiology? What was happening within the school? All of these things are part of the reasons why we get dysregulated. And so we have to keep asking that question, why is this happening? Because maybe she was deficient in certain minerals, and just bringing those minerals up would have reduced the fidgetiness that she was having in school. Maybe it was a blood sugar dysregulation because she wasn't eating properly, because she was, getting on the bus at 6:45 in the morning and mom was given Pop-Tarts for breakfast. Like, some things that simple could very easily change the scope of things. So I have a client who has had very, very high anxiety, going on about 13 years after a major trauma. But her system was primed for that before, because of the traumas of her childhood. In my conversations with her, as we are working through this anxiety, I come to discover that she's not eating until 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. So she's not feeding her body with any kind of minerals and nutrition that's going to help her nervous system rest. So that was one of the first things that we did, was let's get you on something very simple first thing in the morning so that we can start nourishing your system. She had been on and off, I'm just looking at my notes, she had been on and off antidepressants for about 13 years. She had had significant relationship trauma, and she had had a lot of abandonment in her childhood. So over the course of the time that we've been working together, and we're still working together, it's been a little bit less than 6 months, we've been able to stabilize her nervous system, but it has taken a long time, because there were all these other pieces and parts that we weren't even talking about, like how was she nourishing herself? And so we had to really bring in some key remedies to help shift one little thing at a time. First, we just worked on waking up in fight or flight. Then we worked on the tearfulness that she was experiencing every single day. Then we had to work on how do we address, once her system started to stabilize, then some of the trauma, some of the memories started coming back. So we had to work on how do we address some of these different memories that are coming back. We had to do some inner child work, and that inner child work helped her to begin to realize why she was responding to things in her adult life, because there was a pattern, there was limiting beliefs that had happened in her child, and it gave her, it didn't correct it, but it gave her wisdom to be able to then go, oh, wait a minute, this isn't me. This is that pattern from my inner child. And so she learned tools how she could begin to shift that. Some of the remedies that we used were Ignatia, calc carb. We used a handful of combinations for PTSD, and then somatic exercises, again, to help settle the nervous system. So that's, and she went from a moment without anxiety to a morning without anxiety to a day without anxiety to 3 days without anxiety. So, and we keep, and once a client feels what it feels like to not be in that fight or flight, then it opens up the possibility to start shifting those limiting beliefs that, oh my gosh, I actually can heal.
Lisa, have you ever had one of these folks come to you and you look at, because you asked the why, which is the thing that unfortunately our allopathic brethren can't afford to ask, because if they did, their drugs would almost never be part of the solution, right?
Yeah.
But if I talk about a diet, scenario, and I don't mean like I'm dieting to lose weight. I mean, that concept of what are you eating, right? We ask that question. Why? Let's see if there's anything contributing. Have you ever had somebody come in like, dude, I don't have anything to say. You're eating. That is amazing. I don't think that would happen, but has that ever happened? Because we're still, as a culture, Lisa, so far removed from the thought that food can impact our emotional states and these other mental states that, when we're like, why are you asking me about my diet? Like, I just wonder if you've ever encountered somebody with these emotional things that there's no dietary issue at all.
I mean, maybe a few. I do tend to attract people who are already on the holistic path, or they're already bought in, so they've already made those switches. So sometimes it's just the fine tuning of it. Maybe it's just looking at the space in between meals, to regulate the blood sugar. Yeah, I mean, occasionally, not often, but occasionally.
I'm always curious
And
because
it's hard with the 20 somethings, with the Gen Z, because they just maintain a different schedule.
Yeah. Or also, this thing, like my friend Liana, and she was Sherry Caval and put up with the seed oil issue. Right?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Because I can say that for myself. I've been organic since 1990. And it wasn't until a few years ago where I was like, what about seed oils?
Right.
I was eating organic seed oils, and it was like, that's not good. So, those things can affect one of the things we know, mental and emotional states, and the wrong fat or the lack of fat, the low fat, the fear of fat. That's another big aspect of our culture, right? And as Americans, we have been sold that thought form, which has been greatly harmful to so many functions, endocrine as well, of course, but brain, neurological, emotional function, going back to something as simple as correcting the fats or the fear of fats.
Absolutely. And why do we have that? Because we are in a convenience oriented society. We just want the convenience. Just make it quick. Give it to me quick. Give me the drug. Let me move on. All of those kind of things.
I can't be bothered to do all the stuff you want me to do, Lisa. Or Robert. I'm like, dude, you're coming to me at this point. You've probably been through all the other quick fixes, and now you're at your wit's end about that. And that's where a lot of people are, whether they realize it or not. And that's why, bringing this discussion into the fore to realize, wow, what Lisa's saying, no one's ever talked to me about that. And so that's why I like, again, the conversation we're having. It may or may not be that any of those remedies are the right ones for them. It might be, but the point is, let's start looking at it this way. And for those of you who are inclined, might go, Lisa, I need help, so go to vibrantlife247.com, set yourself up an appointment.
Yeah. So, I mean, okay, first of all, it's no secret. Any homeopath is going to tell you that when people find their way to you, they come crawling to homeopathy. They don't start with homeopathy. They crawl to homeopathy because they've tried everything else. And some of it has worked, some of it hasn't, some of it they've plateaued, but they're not getting that final rebalance in their system, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I would say is we use in homeopathy a term called maintaining cause. So you can take all the homeopathy you want, but if you continue to eat the seed oils, or you continue to go to the fast food restaurants, or you continue to ignore the way your nervous system is speaking to you about what's going on, you've got a maintaining cause. There's only so much that anything is going to be able to do if you aren't actually looking at your world and how you are interacting with it. In older times or ancient cultures, or however you want to say that, we lived within the natural rhythms of the earth. We didn't have lights on until midnight. And there was a lot of candlelight. I had run a program called 30 Days of Quiet during the winter season. And one of the things that I do is I turn the lights down. I do candlelight. I do soft lighting, because the circadian rhythm is so dysregulated when we've got those lights. I mean, I'm sitting under a big light right now, and I can feel how it just impacts me in a really negative way. The blue lights coming off of our technology, we cannot expect to get a good night's sleep when we're staying on our phones and our computers until 11 p.m. and then we're shutting them off and then we're getting ready to go to bed. Like, we have to have time for our circadian rhythm to get back into balance. And that was part of, older ancient cultures. We had those natural rhythms. We had more communal living. Communal living helps to regulate your nervous system. There's a co-regulation that happens when you are in relationship with other people, as long as it's a healthy relationship. We had rituals and ceremonies that we did, the solstices, the equinoxes. Those are great things that we even in today's culture can recognize as a shift that helps to regulate our nervous system. We valued silence. We had slow dinners. We had Sundays that nobody worked. That was a time that everybody, all the community in the family, was re-regulating. People may not work Sunday, but how many people are crazy busy? We got to run to church, and then we got to run do this, and we got to run do that. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, Sunday is not a day off for people. They may not be doing their work, but there is way too much stimulation going on Sundays. And we just talked about it. Jim and I went out when we got on the river. I got on that river and I went,
I feel it. When you told me that, I'm like, that's awesome. That's why, even in the midst of the crazy schedule, if we can call it that, we got a lot of demands on our time, and we volunteered into it because we're here to do a lot in whatever time we have. But at the same time, it's like, I got to get out into that garden. I got to steal away, even if it means it's going to crimp something else. In fact, I sacrificed the homeopathic hit of the day, which is not a big deal because you're on and we're talking homeopathy anyway. But I'm like, I got no time to do that. We're going to do it tomorrow. But this, this is fine. But just to be able to get outside, to have some semblance of balance and taking that time. I don't, whatever day you guys choose, I try to do better each week, one day that we can kind of kick back and relax a little bit. And it is perhaps one of the hardest things for me to do, even though I know I need to. So sometimes I have to just grab it when I can, and I hope it accumulates.
And it does.
Example.
Yeah, it does. And this is probably one of the hardest things to realize, is that sometimes those little small shifts are actually very cumulative. But in the beginning, it's like small shifts, small, and then, and it takes a long time. But then when it all kind of comes together, then you see that path go up, very sharply, and so we have to come back into our body. So Super Don and I were talking beforehand, and he was talking about how you have these side effects, and that's your body saying, no, this is not working for me. And then what happens? We go to the doctor and we say, now we're having all these issues. And the doctor says, well, let's give you another drug, because the first drug, we have to drug your side effects with another drug.
Yeah.
We have to get back into our bodies, and we have to ask why. What is happening? Your body is so wise, and it will tell you what you need if you learn how to listen to its language. And that is one of the things that, as homeopaths, that is core to the way that we practice, is listening to our clients' bodies. What's going on? What is the body telling you about that particular thing? And I work with my clients. It could even be vitamins and supplements that they're taking. Like, what is your body telling you about that? Because we can get kind of worked up in our heads about, we just replace the drugs with the supplements and the, all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
So,
man, I love the statement you made, drugging your side effects.
Right.
That's awesome. That says a lot right there. And I think, as we were talking with Super Don earlier, he for all I know, he's already done the song. I think it was meditation or medication or
meditation.
That is like, wow, that was profound. That came through. That could be a great song.
So have you ever heard of the author Kim John Payne? He wrote the book on simplicity parenting.
I haven't read that.
Okay, this was one of my guiding principles when I was raising my children. And one of the terms that he used is called islands of calm. How do you create islands of calm within your home so that everybody's nervous system can re-regulate? And I really took that to heart. That was something that I did quite a bit. And it can look in many, many different ways, but it is literally an intentional time out. And sometimes we need those a couple times during the day.
Dude, did I need that like yesterday? I think I was Hurricane Scotty yesterday. I'm like, everybody get out of my way. And it wasn't like I was meaning to be mean or not, but it was like the energy coming through because the intensity I'm like, I know there's so many things that I need to get done and I can't possibly do it. And so the energy is dysregulated in a sense. And so what's bouncing off of me is like, I made for probably some good monologues yesterday, but goodness, not calmness within, the home. Right. And it's like, I had to get a decent night's sleep. I had to get outside. I had to catch up with some things. And like, I could already tell my energy's way better than yesterday. I still got some improvement to do. So I love that we're talking about this subject today with you. It's only going to help me as well.
Yeah, and so I'll make a comment on that, and then I'll share two more client stories with you where homeopathy can really play a part in this entire conversation. But what I think about is, again, because I look at it through the nervous system, what's happening in the nervous system. So we each have our own nervous system that can get dysregulated, and then we come into the family unit, and I want us to be thinking about our families as a unit, as a living, breathing unit that also has its own nervous system. So each of us as parents, we have the responsibility to look at what is dysregulating us, so that when we come into the family unit, we are regulating the nervous system of our family, because our children cannot do it. And we may think that we are hiding it from them. Oh, no. Our children are so connected to us that they know what's going on under the surface. They just don't have the language for it, but they know something is off. And we know it too. I mean, you're connected to your wife. I'm connected to my husband. I know when he walks in the door that something is off because I can see it. I can sense it. I can feel it in my system. And so we have to be really focusing on regulating not only ourselves, but the nervous system of our families, because that's what's going to give us the tools. That's what's going to set the foundation for us to go out into a world that is going to constantly try to dysregulate us.
Yes. Yeah.
So I want our children to grow up being able to be like, I'm tapping out of that because that doesn't feel good, because they know what a regulated nervous system feels inside their family and inside their body.
Yeah. And tapping out is not a cop out, right?
No.
There are points where it's not going to serve you more or the whole family by engaging and spiraling it, if you will, in that sense. So you say you have a couple other stories to share?
Yeah. So I think I've talked about this on the show before, but one of my favorite success stories is a 17-year-old girl that came to me. She had 2 eating disorders, 2 anxiety diagnoses. And they had spent the last 3 years, her father reached out to me. They had spent the last 3 years really with 4 different doctors and providers. And he said, I just feel like we're circling the wagon. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to take her off of some of the meds that she was on, and they wanted to put her on Prozac. And he had already seen what she was like when she was on the psychotropic. He was like, she becomes not herself. I lose her. And so he did not want to do that. And he didn't know what else to try. So friend of a friend, and the referral, and she ended up on my calendar. And they were unsure she was going to graduate from college or from high school. And her main thing was this food issue and this fear. Like, she had this major fear of health. It was a health anxiety type fear. She was afraid she was going to get poisoned. She was afraid everything that she ate, some was going to make her sick. And she had emetophobia, which is this fear of throwing up. That was as a result of a very specific traumatic experience that she had witnessed, that she had suppressed, which over the time that we worked together, we were able to uncover that. The main remedy that we used with her, we used a handful, but the main remedy that we used with her was arsenicum. I mean, it's such a great remedy, and that's specific for that fear of getting poisoned. In 4 months, she was undiagnosable. 4 months. She had been on and off all these drugs for 3 years, and they did not think she was going to graduate. She had missed so much school that she just couldn't function in normal life. I got a text from her dad a couple of months ago, and he was like, "This is amazing. She graduated, she's in college, she's off traveling, and she's now sending her father pictures of these really unique food dishes that she's trying and eating." It doesn't have to be that hard, but we just have to be really focused on what are the tools that we have and how can we apply those tools in a manner that is going to help move her along. And again, as a homeopath, I also do the coaching. So as these trauma things were coming up, we had this container that she could process all of the fears that were coming up, all of the anxieties, all of the awarenesses. And then eventually we were able to get to that trauma. And we had to use some remedies to address that trauma because it really dysregulated her system when the memory came back. But that's another example of the power of homeopathy. She didn't have to go on Prozac. Because Prozac wouldn't have fixed that.
Well, yeah, great news. And, as much as I'm a hardcore, not a drug guy anymore, like I grew up with medicines and such, if we can preclude the need, perceived, real or otherwise, of those categories of psychiatric drugs, I think you'd be hard pressed to argue that anybody wouldn't be benefited by not having to resort to those drugs that are still not even fully understood. The hows of why it works, when it works, even though the so-called side effects, which are direct effects, just not marketable, happening. By the way, Your Last Chance commented, and this is a good one. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Dr. Peter R. Bregan, who has 11 books on the subject. He's a MD psychiatrist, and he's been awesome on the show. He's one of the very special guests we've had over the years to speak out from within to say how dangerous and desperately awful that category of medicines is, even though, again, we're dealing with a lot of people that are relying upon them, and we're not telling anybody to drop off them cold turkey. We wouldn't be responsible to say it that way. Mm-hmm. But ideally, if your goal is to safely move off, that's why the opening story today was about the off-ramp. Even the psychiatrists are going, we got to develop an off-ramp. This is not good.
Yeah. And this is the other reason why I included a special module, a lesson in my course on the emotions. Because oftentimes if we can handle those acute emotional upsets that happen, then we can prevent these long-term chronic issues from happening. And most courses focus on how do we handle the colds and the coughs and the flus, and my course focuses on all that. But I layered in that emotional piece because that's my jam. That's what that's what I love. That's the area that I love to
yeah, well, it's one of those, homeopathic meetings where you complete me. It's like we getting that aspect of it out. I've just enjoyed so much that we've been able to do that together and bring an expansive knowledge to the best of our ability, even with the limited time we have doing this, to really open it up. And the course you have, we in the intro, you were given an incredible discount. What's available now? I know that when people reach out to you and you mentioned the RSP show, you're giving them $100 off your consults, your services, and coaching. What about the course itself?
Yes. So the course, I've got a new code for you. It's CALM20.
Okay.
I'll give you $20 off the course. So CALM20, because we all need a little bit more calm, especially. I have had to really regulate myself in this conversation because this makes me really crazy, really activated, and really sad. It's a very sad state of affairs that we are in. And I don't want that Gen Z to be in that place. I don't want the millennials. I don't want I don't want our children. There is a better way. There is a better way. And if we have to move to a psychiatric drug, we want to move, that needs to be way down the road. And the conversation with the doctor is, what's the off-ramp here?
Yeah. What's our long-term strategy as opposed to get them out of crisis, which again, that's allopathic medicine. But even so, as you point out rightly, that we can integrate homeopathy to the benefit without disrupting or interacting. It's not contraindicated. These things are not acting like one drug or a supplement, even counteracting or working in a negative way. As they say, it's adversely impacting whatever they're trying to do. We're not doing that with homeopathy. That's, one of the unique aspects of what we're able to do.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, Lisa, we got the 30th coming up 10 days from now, which is the next AMA. Are you going to be around for that?
I have to look at my calendar. I think we're going to be in Nashville that weekend, visiting my daughter.
Okay. It's a Saturday. So if you guys, whatever, you'll be Central Time. So it'll be 11 a.m. Central Time that day, if you're available.
Yeah. I'll look at my calendar and see.
All right. Now, that shirt behind you, is that ever going to be worn, or is it now decoration? It's okay if it is. I love the message.
It will be worn. I just didn't put it on today because I wanted to put it in the background, because I wanted everybody to know, even with this conversation that is really heavy for a lot of people, because we're dealing with, like, people can handle their gut dysfunction, but it's hard to handle what's going on in your mind, especially when it's that anxiety, that depression. I mean, it's hard. I've had those experiences myself. And it was really the chronic fatigue diagnosis that stopped that for me, because I was on the Zoloft and I was on Wellbutrin after my mom had passed away, trying to deal with the depression associated with. I didn't feel good. We never got the right dosage. It never really shifted it. And then when I got this chronic fatigue diagnosis and finally found a holistic doctor after a couple of years, he was like, "You're off all of it." Like, no. And because I could have been 50 years old and still on those medications.
Yeah. Well, thank God you chose a different path. And I'm grateful, because our paths crossed and we're having a good time together. Thank you.
Yes, I want people to know the power. I just wanted to put it up there because, the power to heal truly is yours. You have to be your own advocate, for sure.
Yeah. So, like the t-shirt says, the RSB show says, and Lisa Rooney says, the power to heal is yours.